Hello, everyone.
Hello, can you guys hear us?
I can hear you.
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I can hear
Oh,
you.
perfect. Wonderful. So we'll get started. I know people are going to trickle in, but just since it's only 45 minutes, I want to be very respectful of everybody's time, and we can get started. So let me start with, first of all, thank you very much for joining the webinar. I know it's Friday, also around the lunchtime, so really appreciate all of you joining the webinar and trying to hear us out about our product, which does employee lifecycle management. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with sharing a deck, talk about the product at a very high level, what it does, what are the benefits it offers, and then Alexis, who's my colleague from the sales side, she will take us through the product demo. We'll keep the product demo to be 30 minutes only so that we cover everything in a fast track. And then, you guys can always schedule a more personalized demo with us where we can look at your problem, what your needs are, and get into the details. So getting started on RoboMQ Hire2Retire, right? So the most important thing is, what do we do? Essentially, what we do is we take the data from HR, or we take the HR profile, which has your basic PII, it has your job role, your employment history, who you report to, these kind of things, and convert them into identity, access, privilege, and allocation of resources that you want. So that your identity account is created, you have access and privileges to know what you need to know, and we have your laptop, workspace, and other things, those things set up for you when you start your first day so that you have a good first day experience by integrating with the service desk system, creating the ticket, triggering the workflows, assigning the job incidents, and so on. So we ensure that your HR profile gets converted into identity, access, and privilege profile, and you have all the resources, you're all set to start working on the first day, which often is not such a smooth experience in a lot of places because, humans have to do the work. It takes time to get that done. We sync the data, so we manage your life cycle throughout your employment in the company, right? So when you have change of role, change of name, transfer, relocation, job title change, any of those changes as they're performed on HR, they get reflected into your identity, access, and privilege. So if your job changes, you move from marketing to sales, you get different privileges. So we take care of that. Role-based access control and access provisioning, it's a very important piece of it. It ensures security. It reduces the cybersecurity risk and other things. We do support role-based access control as well as we do support attribute-based access control. And then we do resource provisioning and service desk integration, timely termination, making sure the right privileges are there, and that helps us avoid security and compliance risk, as well as we help you with the compliance logs so that you can have a right process for employee lifecycle and access management, as well as you can have evidence to show that you are doing it. Pretty horizontal product because it's HR related and with some idiosyncrasies and different ways of doing things. Broadly, most industries and most customers do this process. Of course, some industries have higher turnover rate and so on and so forth. So different features of the product are more valued by some versus other, but pretty horizontal product. A short story, we started in 2015 because Topgolf, then our integration customer, came to us that they are growing. And right now there are like 104 plus locations, 48,000 plus employees. Back then there were 13,000 employees, 5 locations. And the CTO talked to me and he said, I need an army of sysadmin just to manage the employment life cycle or account creation for Topgolf locations. And then we built this piece of code integrating ADP Vantage to AD or hybrid AD in that case. And then a few years later, we said, okay, this is a great opportunity, and we built this whole no-code self-service product, which is now our go-to-market product. Similarly, we have a lot of customers in healthcare industry. I learned after getting into the industry that there's something called traveling nurse, and there's a lot more turnover in this industry. And this industry, uses our product a lot, despite all kind of HIPAA and other security requirement for which we are certified with SOC 2 and other things to ensure we have that data security in place. But we let these organizations focus on what they do best, which is taking care of our health, whereas the lifecycle management and access provisioning can get fully automated through our product. I talked about it, but essentially this is just a repetition of the benefits, right? Automating onboarding, pre-boarding, creating, managing profile, role-based access control, as well as integration into service desk, integration with Salesforce, making sure the shared mailbox is in place, and so many things that happen in while employee is working or managing his or her life cycle through the organization. This is a quick view of what it is like before and after. Before, common scenario we see either HR sends the email to IT to take care of these things, or they create a ticket in the ticketing system. Somebody picks up the ticket, creates the account. Often they will copy somebody's account, rename the account, and just create the account, give them the privilege as needed or as instructed, and go about it. Similarly, the manager change. Some places they will get an Excel tracker from HR, and sysadmin will do the job. From that state, we transition to a state where we get the data as things are happening in the HR system. Pull that data. You define the workflow as to what are your rules of business, how you do the life cycle management, and our product will apply them, and thereby creating a near real-time integration between HR systems, your IDPs, which could be Azure AD or Entra ID, Active Directory, on-prem, hybrid, Google, as well as Google Directory. And then we do third-party provisioning as well as service desk integration. Was there a question? Sorry, I heard a noise. Okay.
Just a cough, I think.
So this is before and after, and this is a little bit of what we do. And I think just keeping this in mind is important, because when I'm going to show the product, this is really what we are trying to do, right? So we get the data from HR over API or extract, apply your workflow rules, create your identity and privilege into one of your IDPs, and then we do third-party auto provisioning or SIM provisioning. We do the last mile and resource provisioning. And this is all based on your profile, based on your role-based access control, based on who you are, based on your ABAC or RBAC. So managing the life cycle, creating the identity account, giving you the right privilege, giving you the right access, making sure you are set up with the right resources to make your work happen. We are big on dynamic role-based assignment and RBAC. And as Alexis will show in the demo, we do take care of what privileges you get based on your attribute, based on your profile. And as the profile changes in the HR system, similar changes are made on the identity side. We are very well rated on G2. You guys can check out our reviews on G2. We consistently, for last many quarters, we have been in the high performer category in user provisioning and identity and access management space. So, and people have rated us very well on the support. We do take care of customers. Our support is included with the subscription. We don't charge for support. We don't charge for any professional services. Our pricing is very straightforward. Per active employee that we manage, we charge based on that. 24/7 support, proactive monitoring, everything is included. Only additional cost you have is initial onboarding or quick start pro, as you call, so that we can get your workflows or your business logic. We help you set that up on our no-code product, which you will see in a minute. And with that, I'll hand it over to Alexis to take you guys with the product.
Thank you, Brahm. Nice to meet you, everyone. What I can do is I'll go ahead and share my screen and show you guys a brief, comprehensive overview of the demo. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So thank you. What you're looking at here is what you would see when you log into Hire2Retire. All of these gray boxes are workflows. You can have as many as you'd like. You can have as many accounts as you'd like, maybe one for UAT, one for production. And what this does is it allows for that segregation of duty and helps support the entire process from promotion to production. So let's go ahead to this workflow. And when you do click on a workflow, this is the first thing you'll see. This first overview page, you can think of it as like a business overview document or process document. Essentially, all the choices you've made throughout the workflow will be spit out here in plain English. So you can see how you mapped it to Active Directory, the steps you're choosing to take at the various lifecycle stages, how you're choosing to handle that, and so forth. And another thing, while we are no-code self-service, of course, we're technically code behind the scenes. So one thing you can always do is if you deploy the workflow, make a change, redeploy it, and it's not turning out how you envisioned, you can always go up here to version history and roll back to the last known good state. So jumping to identity, this is where you're going to make the bulk flow of those workflow decisions. We'll start with application, which is pretty straightforward. You pick your HR system that you're using, how you want to integrate that same HR system to Hire2Retire, as well as your current AD setup. And like you saw on that previous picture that Ram just showed, we do need to connect to your HR system and your Active Directory, so you would set up those connections here. Regardless of whatever type of Active Directory, whatever type of HR system, you have that handled in this step. And once that is done, now you can set up the rest of your workflow steps. So in HR data definition, this is where you choose which attributes you want to send to us from your HR system. Your HR system will have a whole bunch of attributes. We certainly don't need all of them. The ones we do require are Associate ID or Employee ID. Essentially, it acts as our numerical identifier to help us know that John Smith in your HR system is the same as John Smith in Active Directory. And if you don't have that mapped currently, no worries, we have PowerShell scripts to help expedite that process. And then some basic PII, first name, last name, job title. If you want to include reports to position ID, we can keep your gal current. If you wanted to throw phone number in there, we can help with MFA. And then first day worked, last day worked, since we do support scheduled events. And the rest of these attributes are essentially ones of your choice, maybe ones that you want to keep updated in Active Directory, or attributes you want to choose to organize how you manage security groups and distribution lists.
So essentially think of this way that you need the basic PII to create the identity account. You need the job information, which is department, title, location, all these things to give you the right privilege and right access. And then you need the manager ID to put the reporting structure org chart in place. And the start date and last day worked is what helps the product determine what life cycle you are in and be able to do those events.
And for those scheduled events, you might be thinking that you might have employees in multiple different time zones. Of course, we do handle that with this feature. What you would do is select multiple time zones, make sure the employees' time zones are set in here, and what that will allow us to do is make sure that for those scheduled events, let's say someone's getting terminated, 6 p.m. on their last day, you want to disable their account, put themselves into a terminated OU, shared mailbox, all of those steps. At 6 p.m., this will make sure it happens at 6 p.m. in their time zone. So we do account for that as well. And once you have chosen which attributes you want to send to us, next step, of course, is mapping it into Active Directory. So all those attributes that you were just selecting will show up here on the right, and you can drag and drop those to the corresponding attribute in Active Directory. Of course, there is no coding needed, but we do support data transformations modeled off Excel, if you would like. So a common use case here, if they have a preferred name, use that. If not, legal first name, last name. You'll see that we have these functions here that you can use throughout any of these attributes and honestly throughout the workflow, if you would like. And when making the UBN, we have a few pretty common options here. You might see yours amongst the screen, and if not, you do have the option to do a custom rule. We also handle duplicates here. So maybe you do first name dot last name, the next John.Smith that comes in, you want to add their middle initial, add those letters incrementally. We can handle that here, as well as domain names. So for many companies, maybe you just have one, but we have plenty of customers that have multiple based off various attributes. So you'll notice this little icon. that you'll see amongst all of the attributes, and what it is basically a lookup table. So using any of the attributes you selected in that earlier step, such as location, you can choose to organize how you want to set up this lookup table and change those attributes accordingly. So there are no limits to the rules here. There's no limits to the number of attributes. We do support and/or logic. You can get pretty complicated if you would like, and you'll now notice that little icon throughout the workflow. So as you have different situations, you'll be able to account for them with this feature. Once you have mapped to Active Directory, next step is setting up those lifecycle business rules. So this is essentially where you're going to be selecting what steps you want automated at these various lifecycle processes. So for example, someone's getting hired, we're creating that account. Do you want that password to be unique system generated? If so, it would be seeded HMAC, so pretty secure. However long you'd like it to be, require them to change it when they first sign in. But one big feature that a lot of customers like to take advantage of recently is our pre-boarding features. What this essentially allows is, as long as HR can put information in your HR system or maybe the ATS system in advance before that new hire start date, what we can do with that information is go ahead and create an account for them, maybe in a disabled state for security reasons. Let's say you select 4 days here. That means that if HR puts the information, let's say 2 weeks in advance, you only need 4 days before their start date, Hire2Retire will wait until 4 days before that new hire start date, create that account in that disabled state, and then on their first day at, let's say, 9 a.m., you can automatically enable the account and everything will be ready to go for that employee. If you do have remote employees and maybe you want the account to be working a couple days before, maybe a few hours before so they can get everything set up before meeting with everyone for the first time, we do allow for that as well. Jumping to change of role, we also are able to handle those group memberships here automatically as well, and we have a few different ways to handle that. So our most popular option is retain all groups not defined in group mapping automation, and what this basically means is, let's say someone wants to change departments from sales to marketing. Hire2Retire would see that, they see you selected this option, so what it'll do is take away that employee's sales-related access, give them the marketing-related access as determined by your rule sets on Hire2Retire, but if there was any manual access given to them outside of those rules, outside of Hire2Retire, then we'll leave it alone upon that change. So essentially, it accounts for all the situations in which someone, for some reason, needed manual access, which happens all the time, and therefore this is our most popular option by far from our customers, but we do have other ones as well. Maybe you want them to keep all their groups, not retain any, pretty strict option, but it's available if you would like, and these are some ways that you can handle this. Jumping to termination, we have a few steps that we handle automatically here. You can put that employee in a terminated OU automatically, purge certain attributes like personal email or phone number if you no longer want them. And another thing to point out here is that, of course, we do support scheduled terminations. So let's say it's someone's last day, they sent in their 2 week, and at 6 p.m. you want to make sure all of these termination steps are being done. If you select 6 p.m. here, like I mentioned earlier, we'll make sure that at 6 p.m. in that person's time zone, the account is disabled, they're moved to the proper OU, they're given that shared mailbox if that's what you would like, shared OneDrive, which I will get into shortly, and that will make sure it all happens automatically here.
And also, like, this is like, she's showing a very simple version, but you can also choose that certain type of employees are terminated at certain hours. So there's always this lookup table that you can build and say, okay, if this employee type is this, I want to terminate them at certain times. Or you can say, I want to terminate employees after the last day work. There are scenarios where they are executives or salespeople. You don't want to remove every access on that day. You may want to, keep them still active for some days. So there are scenarios which are very unique. So that's why we're not getting into that detail. But yes, it's feature rich to support your requirements.
And of course, one other very common termination type is immediate, which we support as well. The way that would work is, let's say HR, for the reason attribute in your HR system, types in involuntary. As soon as we see that, regardless of that employee's last day worked or whether they're still on the payroll, we will go ahead with all of those termination steps. And a few more of those steps are shown here. So how you want to handle group memberships. If you want to remove directly assigned Microsoft licenses, this is usually a pretty manual and common step. It can now be automated, as well as sharing OneDrives. If you want to share it with the manager, before it was manual, now it's literally a checkbox. Let's say for some of our customers, not everyone needs to share their OneDrive, only people in certain positions, or people at certain, if they're a manager, or if they're a chief. You do have the conditional option here. So you can choose what conditions in which to automatically share this OneDrive with your manager or with another user. And that same logic applies for shared mailbox. A pretty common one, if you do want to put an employee's mailbox into a shared mailbox, we have a lot of options here. Again, it can be conditional. You can also choose to share it with the manager, remove all aliases, and if you want to change the display name, you'll notice on the right here, you once again see the attributes that you selected earlier, as well as the ones from Active Directory. You can drag and drop any of these where you would like. So a common use case is first name, last name shared. And then you can have automatic replies that differ based off whether the email that came in is from within or without the organization. You can put whatever you would like in here as well, and again, that would be automated. Same with mail forwarding. If you want to forward it to the manager, if you want to forward it to someone else, that's an option as well. One last thing to point out here briefly is if you do delete the account after a certain aging period, you have that option. If it's never, that works too. There might be some other cases or maybe only for certain employees. Once again, that option is here. And last lifecycle step here is leave. Essentially, there's a few things you can do when someone's being placed on leave if this is part of your current standard processes. So maybe what you do is disable the user, put them in a certain OU, and you'd like them to keep their current groups they have while they're on leave. Totally doable, and you can have that selected here. If you don't have a current leave standard process, what you can always do is simply uncheck it, and we will no longer handle that lifecycle. So,
any questions so far on the account creation? Because now we're going to get to the privilege and how the privileges are assigned. Okay, we'll assume silence is no and continue.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and jump forward to OU assignment. We have the way of handling this in terms of concept of priority and rule sets. So let's say a new hire is coming in, and Hire2Retire will go ahead and say, okay, first I'm going to look at this first priority rule set. Are they in this department and this location? If so, put them in this OU. If none of these apply, then we'll go over to the second priority rule set, apply the same logic, and we can keep doing this so forth and so forth until finally there's a default OU they would fall in. Of course, we have some prospects or customers that just have a single rule set. If you're in this department, you're in this OU. So you can make it simple, but we do have the option to get as in-depth as you need to apply with your current processes. And in terms of group memberships, distribution lists, all of these options that you see up here, we do support, including Microsoft 365 group, Entra ID only distribution lists, Entra ID only security groups, mail-enabled security groups. We handle them all, and you'll see that they do have a similar look to the OU assignment, but the main difference here is there's no concept of priority. You can be in multiple of these, you can have multiple distribution lists assigned to you based off your job title, and of course this is dynamic. So let's say someone gets promoted from HR associate to HR manager. No worries, Hire2Retire will see that job title change. We'll say, okay, now they need this distribution list. Maybe they need a distribution list removed. That will all be automatic. And you'll see the examples here. You can have as many attributes as you would like for your organization, and or there's no limit here, and there's no limit to rules as well. Another thing to point out is all of the groups we support, we also support default lists to add to every user. So maybe there's a default distribution list for the entire company that can be selected here. And as this step can be one of the more time-consuming parts of the implementation process, first of all, it's completely optional. You don't need it to go live, and you can always incrementally add as you get more familiar. But I will point out this one little feature here that what it does is it can read through your Active Directory currently, find the current patterns that you have, and offer them up to you as suggestions. So maybe it'll say, hey, we noticed that 88% of people with the job title Product Manager are being given access to this distribution list. Would you like to make that a rule on Hire2Retire? And it'll also show you outliers as well. So basically, this can help expedite your process, take a little bit of the weight off those shoulders from turning it from manual to this automated rule set version. And last step here is Communication Hub. This is essentially emails that are data rich and they can send automatically at any of these life cycles that you're viewing here. So for example, the onboarding life cycle. Maybe when someone's being onboarded, you want to automatically send them a welcome to your first day email. You can go ahead and make sure that onboarding is checked here. If it's conditional, maybe it's different based off of the company type or the location. You can set that up here as well. Notify the manager is another checkbox option. And what you put in your subject and body is completely up to you. So maybe for your first day of work, you're like, hey, first name, welcome to your first day. We're so excited you're here. Your manager is manager attribute. Of course, it will alter dynamically as needed. And you can put images, color, all that sort of stuff is something we recently added, which is really exciting. Your company signature can be in here. And there's a lot of different use cases that customers take advantage of with Communication Hub. So what I'm about to show you is some of the service desks that we natively integrate with. But even with that, some customers prefer to send tickets using Communication Hub. Maybe you want to send it to employees to acknowledge the company handbook, or to send a DocuSign that they would like to send. You can send it internally as well to a manager, let them know of a new hire's password. People can get pretty creative here, but this is basically an overview of this Communication Hub feature. Again, you'll notice that the attributes from the HR system and Active Directory are all available to drag and drop as you would like. And that is essentially it for the Identity tab.
Can you schedule these as well? So we send out communications to certain groups when a new hire is coming, week or 2 weeks in advance before they come on board.
So they are not scheduled, but they are scheduled in the sense when certain events happen. So to answer, I think it's yes, but I'll answer it in detail. So let's say somebody is coming on board and their start date is 15 days from now. So their onboarding is already scheduled. So I got the data from HR system today, but I scheduled the onboarding 15 days later on the start date. Now, when the onboarding happened, which is a scheduled event 15 days later, at that time, the onboarding communication will kick on. So essentially, they are scheduled. Did I answer your question correctly?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Okay, good question. I will go ahead and jump to Service Desk tab, which is essentially to show you the current ITSMs that we natively integrate with right now. We are constantly building this with our feature releases that we have every 4 to 6 weeks. And we do have a REST connector option if you do have a REST API that you wanted to set up for your ITSM. So to show an example of what that could look like, you'll see it's pretty similar to Communication Hub. You can make it conditional, choose the life cycle it's sending out at, and then the rest of it will be according to your ITSM. You can have a little bit more field level data mapping here and choose the different project request types as is custom to each of those ITSMs. So this is an example with Jira Service Management, a ticket that you can do. These are a few other options that we have, but again, we are consistently adding to this, and people might use this for resource provisioning. Hey, first name, last name is starting on start date. Please get them a laptop. Please get them a desk space, that sort of thing. In terms of role-based access control, which we've been mentioning a little bit throughout this process, what you'll see here is what we natively offer currently for RoboMQ that you can integrate with for third-party applications. So if you see any familiar ones here, that might be helpful, or if there's any that you have in mind, we always love to know because we are, again, consistently adding to this with every feature release that we have. The ones you're looking at, again, are the native ones. There are a bunch offered by Microsoft as well. They don't directly connect right now, so you might have to set them up. Or you can also let us know if you'd like us to set them up, or if you have a niche third-party application you don't see on either of these options, let us know and we can build you that custom connector for a one-time flat fee. There's also a REST API option if your third-party application has that, where you can set it up yourself as well.
So only advantage having a connector built by RoboMQ is that it's a much simpler, easier user interface, and we also have the handle of the data that we are processing. So we kind of map and fill everything into the same APIs versus, and we, of course, in both the methods, we apply the ABAC and RBAC. So based on your attribute-based decision or role-based, which is a group membership, you get access or license into certain applications. But when you do it using Microsoft, the RBAC will be set by us. So you will be put into a certain security groups, and your attribute will be mapped into Azure AD because of the data mapping that Alexis showed. So then you can go to Microsoft and make that same ABAC or RBAC, that if somebody so and so, give him a Salesforce license, or somebody is member of a Salesforce user security group, give him Salesforce license, but then you will have to configure the enterprise application, which is offered by Microsoft on Entra ID for Salesforce. Now that generally is an involved work, and you need somebody with a sysadmin privilege as well as knowledge to be able to do it. So the connector that we offer provides much more ease of use, time saving, and which translates into the cost.
Okay. Any questions on anything so far before jumping into the Observe page? Okay, so I'll go ahead, and basically what this page is this is how we see, earlier I mentioned, all the things that Hire2Retire does. We keep track of it so that we can give to you, and you in turn can use that to fulfill any compliance requirements on your end, such as ISO 27001, SOC 2, proving that you do timely terminations, that sort of thing. And a way you can tell that is with this Observe page. So it'll show you an overview. You can organize it by status, how far back you want to go, and you'll see these options here as well. If you want to get into detail, you can click on this little icon. It'll show you which attributes we've got about them from the HR system, as well as what those are in Active Directory. And one thing to point out here is AD is a non-versionable entity, so they don't actually save the previous value, but we will save it so you can see what it used to be, what it is now, and as a result, which security groups were added, removed, or retained. Same with distribution list, Microsoft 365 groups, and all of the groups that we offer. So since we do this, you can see all of those changes in detail, but maybe you don't want to go to Hire2Retire directly to see this every time. You can always schedule a report to the email of your choice and have it set up that way. So maybe every Monday and Thursday at 9, you want to get a report of what changes were made, set this up here, and now that's an automatic process.
I'm sorry. So you're saying that you can see what the previous attribute, AD attribute was?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Just the one previous, like doesn't have like a versioning 5 iterations past, right? Just the last.
So if you relate the events together, you can know it, right? Because let's say there are multiple events coming. Every event processing observe entry will have before and after. So you can stack them together. But from an application point of view, we have not built that consolidated view. What you could do is you can get this data, which Alexis is about to show. You can get this data into your BI, and from there you can relate it. We have an add-on product coming, but it is still in very early design. Most likely next year we'll launch it. We call it Employee 360, and that will provide a full analytical view of employee lifecycle, where you can say, okay, this person, say, James Perron, right? James Perron, it will be able to show you the full life cycle of James Perron, how it changed and so on. And that one, you'll be able to see the whole history of the 5 changes that you talked about. So
Very
right
cool.
now we have data, but do not have the presentation in the format possibly you're looking for. But you can do it using your BI, which we have capability for.
And speaking of which, I'll jump straight to it. If you click this little bell icon, you can pipe all of that rich data into your BI or archival, and we have a few different options there. So AWS 3, MySQL, Azure Blob, all these options can potentially help in terms of audit trail purposes.
So here, what I was just, Christopher, I was replying to you, I was answering to you. The full data capture that she showed you on the observe page, which means what HR data you got, what was the previous state in AD, what is the new state in AD, what privileges were added, removed, or retained, all of that can be pushed into your BI. And then you can use it for compliance purpose as an audit trail, or you can use it for building reports and so on. I know some of our customers have used it heavily on Power BI because once you push it to MySQL, you can build those Power BI reports. That's the use case for this.
And along similar lines, we do also have this run mode option, which what it can do is allow for IT to potentially check first to approve or deny requests from HR before all of this automation is triggered. So for a lot of customers, maybe they're used to this manual process. Now that it's automated, they still want some time to be able to approve or reject it as they're currently used to. And then maybe they get more comfortable, they'll go to autopilot in which the change is made from HR, and then all of the workflows are triggered automatically. In the case of supervised mode, that is when we have this little tab right here, where you'll be able to see which changes are being requested for you to either approve or deny. So
basically, you get a preview. You get everything that will be pushed to your identity platform before it is pushed.
So for example, update. You'll again see that it's similar to the observe page, but the difference is none of these changes have been made yet. So you can see what the previous value is, what it would become if you approve this, and as a result, which security groups would be added, removed, or retained, same with distribution lists, and so forth. And if you want to accept it or reject it, you have the option here. So it's basically like a check that you can do from the IT perspective on HR, if that is your preference. And yeah, one other thing that people sometimes ask questions on is if they can get like a notification anytime there's an error. Of course, that's an option here. Maybe your HR system didn't send us the data right on the dot like they were supposed to. We don't just sit around. Of course, we'll notice that, let you know, and you'll also get an error notification. So part of the subscription, like Ron was mentioning, it's very straightforward, and it includes everything. So that includes proactive monitoring, where we would notice something like this, let you know. 24/7 support around the clock during implementation, after implementation. We have teams both in the US and India. Whenever you need help or advice, we will be here. And of course, you'd have a customer success manager and team assigned to you. Even once you're with us, you'll have business reviews once you've gone live as well, which are basically meetings you can meet with the customer success manager, go over what your current experience is, how are things going, if there's been any big changes on your company. Maybe there's a feature that would be really helpful to your current processes that you don't see on Hire2Retire right now. You can let us know, and within that time frame, we can consider it, potentially give you an ETA, and you would see that new feature on the product at no extra cost. So since we do this, our feature releases every 4 to 6 weeks. You will get all those new features. You'll always have the latest version of Hire2Retire without any cost or anything like that. But yeah, that's basically an overview of Hire2Retire in a nutshell. Are there any questions, comments, things you want to look back on, anything like that?
I have a question. So I work for a law firm, so we have very specific applications that we use. Do you have anything in terms of it dealing with iManage? If anyone here actually knows that application, it's our document management system.
We can look at search it.
is Microsoft.
No.
Oh, I
No,
did.
none of it.
Can you-
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
can you execute SQL scripts from any of these?
So SQL scripts we do not execute. The reason
Okay.
being that most people will not allow a third-party external SQL skill execution. I know that used to be done a few years ago, but with the security, generally not done. So what we'll be able to do is, if let's say you come back and say, okay, I need the connector to be built for iManage. One thing is we do it at a fixed price. It's only $3,000 token money. And then we will evaluate, does iManage has user management APIs? If iManage has user management API, very
They do.
straightforward connection, we'll be able to build it.
Okay, thank you.
And Christopher, if it doesn't have it, I was coming to your database SQL question. If it doesn't have it, then we will build this using the database connector. So you won't write SQL to be fired from the interface, but the connector that we build will have SQL to be fired into your iManage, because there are a lot of applications which will manage their users through a SQL database, and we can make an entry or terminate an entry in the database over the SQL connector. But when we build that connector working with you, we are making sure that that SQL that we fire is secured and doesn't have SQL injection threats and all these things.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? I know we went too fast into covering. We just wanted to give you a preview of what all it can do. And you guys are always welcome to, reach out to us, and we can do a personalized demo, walk over what you are trying to achieve. But generally, any question, because what our attempt is that this process or this automation should reduce almost 90% of the work that your sysadmins do, or the manual work is involved in terms of creating account, giving access, giving privilege, allocating laptop, allocating resources, and so on. So any use case or scenario you want to discuss about?
And if, let's say, you think of one later, what we can also do, and what we'll already do if you'd like, is we can send you a recording of this webinar. You'll have our emails from that as well. And we'll also put a link if you'd like to schedule a call to discuss your specific needs and challenges. We are totally happy to do that. So we'll go ahead, send you guys that, and you can reach out to us at any time. But also, in the meanwhile, thank you for the time that you've spent here with us today. And it was nice to show you the product, get to answer some questions, and show you a little bit of insight of what Hire2Retire can do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
your time
everybody.
on Friday afternoon.
I will.
Thank you
Have a
guys
good
all
weekend.
so much.